Yeah, I think they used to. I don't know if they still do. They changed from being a dominion to something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, the terrible country to the south of them has probably taken them over.
Well, yeah, maybe.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Neil.
When we were working in Johannesburg, one of the things we discovered is that the Hokey Pokey is a universal song. It's in Nepal.
I can believe it. You know, Carl Sagan said something similar one time when they made that gold disc and they sent it out. Remember that, into space with Beethoven symphonies and various things on it. And he said we should have put Happy Birthday on it, because if humanity has a theme song, that comes closest to being, you know, what we all kind of recognize. But the Hokey Pokey is another one. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's too modern. Robert, we haven't seen you for ages.
Yes, yes, it's good to be back. Yeah, I had some health problems and kind of dragged out a little bit, but yeah, feeling better. So yeah, this is my first commission meeting in a while, but I was talking to Elizabeth a little bit ago and she was just saying how much progress has been made. So that's really fantastic to hear.
And your group 3 has really been led very well by Jennifer.
That's what I hear. Thank you, Jennifer, for taking over that group. I really, really appreciate it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to start. So I'm going to share my screen. And Ryle is going to lead us off.
Yeah, I'm going to do the first 3 of these slides to give Elizabeth a little breather so she can let people into the meeting. So this is our, I don't know, semi-regular meeting of the whole group, and we have quite a few things to report. So I'm going to be quite brief with these introductions. Elizabeth, if you give us the next slide, please. This will be on the agenda. Okay, so here we go. The welcome to everyone. Yes, welcome back. We're glad to see you. We're glad to see new faces. What we're going to do in the next hour is give you an updated overview of where we are. Elizabeth will do that in just a few minutes. And she also wants to talk very briefly about a couple of the people that have cycled in and cycled out as group leaders here. And then I will start talking to you about the work that's being done in phase 2. We'll talk a little bit about the website. We have some stuff to report on that. And then I will go very quickly through the work of each of our 6 groups. We'll finish up with a couple of other things. One is a perspective from someone on the point of our work. This is an anthropology instructor that Elizabeth has got ready to go, and she will talk to us a little bit about what she thinks the importance of what we're up to is. And then we would like to discuss with all of you what is next. And if I can sharpen that question just a little bit, we're particularly interested, as you know, this commission has a shelf life. Elizabeth set it up so that it's a year in length. In other words, we're about halfway through. And when we finish with this, the question then arises, what happens next? How do we ensure that some of this work continues, gets elaborated, gets implemented? There may be new things to work on. How do we ensure some sort of sustainability with this? We'd like you to think about that. And this won't be the only time, by the way, that we discuss it, but we'd like to start that discussion today. So that's what we're going to do in the next hour. Elizabeth, if I can have the next slide, I think, yeah, so welcome, right. First-time participants, returning members. The pineapple thing is Elizabeth's idea. I think it's nice. I don't know where she got it from, but I did learn from watching Steve Schmidt on the television in the past 6 months or so that pineapples are a sign of welcome. So welcome to everyone. Especially the first timers. Okay, Elizabeth, are you ready to take over and talk about where we are with things?
Yes, I am. I just want to, Ryle, if you would take a look at the chat, it looks like there are messages in the chat.
Yep, there are a few. I will monitor that.
Okay.
Elizabeth. Yeah,
Okay, so for those of you who are new, we wanted to give just a brief overview of the commission's work so you can read the vision, but it's basically to integrate more job preparation into anthropology programs. In terms of the commission itself, our participation by anthropology associations and societies has really skyrocketed, and our individual participation has also skyrocketed. So we have more than, I don't know, 20 organizations and more than 200 individuals. As Ryle pointed out, we set an initial time frame of 1 year to gather the fundamentals, and we are right on track. Currently, we have 6 work streams moving along, and we are scoping out the 7th one, which will begin this month. So for each group, they follow essentially a 4-phase process. In the first phase, which we completed earlier this fall, it was brainstorming. Second phase is what all of the groups are in right now, which is this kind of discovering phase where they are rapidly collecting data. The third and fourth phases have to do with testing, implementation, and any kind of problem solving related to implementation. Here you can see all the associations that are currently in support of our work. And by that, I mean that we have been speaking directly with the leaders of those associations. Many of them are active participants in the groups that we have formed, and others are just at the point of attending all of the various meetings. So it's quite an impressive array. Of course, we always want more, and we are headed in that direction. So what is the work that's happening right now? Just again, overview. Here are the 7 groups, 6 of which have been working for a number of months, 7th one coming this month. This just gives you a 40,000-foot view of what each of the groups is working on. Ryle will go into more detail in a bit. So right now I want to turn very quickly to recognizing some of the group leaders who have been leading or will lead the groups as we move forward. This is recognition for the first 6 groups. So Gina and Angela have been leaders of group 2 and group 4 respectively. And they are now going to be stepping down, which is a very common practice. People work for a while and then typically step down. In Angela's case, for example, she just had a baby, and other people step up. And so Claire is stepping up to help with the work on group 2, and Janelle is stepping up to take over for Angela. We really appreciate everything that all of these people have done so far. So now we come to phase 2, and I really like this, the donuts. We're in the pink phase now, so just in case you missed that. So Ryle, take it away.
okay, if you'll give us the next slide,
Yep.
which is simply the number 1, and then move right through, and we'll get, is Matt on, or?
No, Matt is not on, but I'll tell you
okay.
what, well, let me just do this slide, Ryle, and
Yeah, I think you should talk about the website, and then I'll
Yeah.
pick up the rest of
okay, so Matt has, honestly, it is so close to being finished. So close, in fact, that I want to show you a little bit of it so that you can see. Let me just move this over so that you can see. Here's the home page. Sorry. Okay, so let's see if we get involved here. Go to the Get Involved. it has, you know, the contact, and then across the top, let's just say we want to go to updates. We have a blog, and we actually have things in the blog. What is the commission? What's around the corner for the commission, with some commentary, T-shaped qualifications, when the next commission meeting is. So that blog will be updated at least bi-weekly, if not weekly. Resources. Resources has 3 different parts to it, 2 of which are part of the commission materials. And that includes all of the work on commission business. So all of our PowerPoints, meeting materials, and so on. And then any conference presentations or workshops we do will be in this area. The other part of the resources page will be all of the compiled resources that Group 2 has been working on. And those still remain to be done. And Matt hopes to work on them this weekend. Here we see all the different work streams. And if you go down, you have a discussion of what each one is about, the 6 that are there, and the 7th one is coming. And I think if you go to, let's say this one is Group 5, it will give you some information about Group 5. So for those of you who are interested in joining a particular group, just go down through the work streams and see if there's one that appeals to you. And the About page is kind of cool too. We have our rationale for why we need this commission in the first place, some background on it, something about the logo and the website, and then all of the leaders, and here are some of the group leaders that are working on the project, past group leaders, because as I said, we do have people coming in and out, depending, many of them are practitioners and have other things going on. Others are faculty members, they too have things going on. And then down here, we have all of the organizations so far that are supporting what we're up to. So that's it for that. Now I'm going to go back to sharing the PowerPoint, which is, okay, so that's the first thing we wanted to report. All right, Ryle, now you get your work streams.
Sure. So let me pick up and briefly run through these 6 work streams. And for those of you that got the last copy of the newsletter, a lot of this is going to be in there, and you can refer to that if you want, but I'm going to just go through it for you very briefly right now. If there are questions on any of this, try and keep them to the end if you don't mind, or put them in a chat and one of us will pick it up and we'll deal with it before the meeting is over. But go ahead, Elizabeth, and do the next one, and we'll start it on this. Okay, so this is Group 1. This is the one that I led, which is about a Delphi survey of practitioners. And I think I've mentioned this to you before, but we asked them 2 simple questions. We got a hold of 34 different younger career practitioners, and we said, what would have helped you get a job that you didn't learn in your program? And we got their answers to that. And then we asked the second question, and what would have helped you do your current job that you didn't get in your training program? We got about 500 responses, and we did frequency distributions of these things. Elizabeth, if you would put the next slide up, I will show you what we got with this. Okay, and I have a complete report. It's about 8 pages long. Anybody who wants this report, just send me an email and I will send you back the report right away. And we're going to put this up on the website. I was talking to Matt about it earlier today. So it will be on the website as soon as the website is live. But if you needed it like tomorrow, just send me an email tonight and I'll send it to you. I want to draw your attention to 2 things. First of all, the most frequently mentioned things for getting a job were things like job search strategies, networking, and then the third one, translating anthropology to industry, by which they meant explaining themselves as anthropologists to potential employers. Moving over to the second question, doing your job. The first thing that they mentioned was methods. A lot of them said, we didn't mind the methods that we were taught, the traditional ethnographic things, but there are a whole host of methods now being used in practice that we were never taught about. And we think those things ought to be brought into the curriculum in some way. And the second thing they mentioned was communication, by which they meant explaining anthropology to their colleagues and to their clients in the workplace. So on the basis of those things, we decided to do round 2 of the Delphi, which is going to go out next week. And we're going to focus on how do you explain anthropology to other people? And secondly, what sort of methods are you using now that you'd like put into the curriculum? So in other words, we're going to get a more granular picture of how these two things work out. I will leave that there. Let's move on to group 2. Okay, so group 2, which is being led by Kira, Claire, Claire Sigworth, and Gina used to do this up until recently, is about pulling together existing training materials. We know that a lot of stuff exists about practice out there. What we don't know is how does it go together? How would it be grouped? You know, if you were to do a Jim Spradley sort of domain analysis of it, what would it look like? So they're working on that, and they've got a ton of resources assembled, and we're going to find a way to put some of these things on the website. We have to be careful about copyright, obviously, so a lot of it may simply be references to things that you would have to go to your library or to JSTOR or something to look for. But that's going to be a very, very good body of resources for instructors to use, and for students for that matter. If we could go to group 3, please.
Yep, but before that,
Sorry, you put this in, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so this is where you send if you have materials that you'd like Kira to archive for you. Yeah.
okay, and we can put Kira's email in the chat. KiraBallon94@gmail.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Group 3 is being led by Jennifer Studebaker, and this is looking at the differences in different practitioner domains, different work sectors. We know that they require different things from people. We know that they approach anthropology a little bit differently. We are very interested in understanding a little bit more about those sector-specific characteristics. So they've been doing interviews with people and pulling together some of what they've learned from that. There'll be a final report coming out fairly soon. There will probably be a one-pager on each of the key sectors, sort of outlining the essentials of it for people. Let's go to the next slide, group 4. Group 4, Angela was doing this until she had her baby. Janelle's doing it with us now, and so is Susan Squires down at the University of North Texas. And we broke this into 2 because we've got 2 things going on here. We were very interested in the narratives that are coming out about efforts to introduce practice and application into anthropology training programs. What's worked, what hasn't worked, why did it work, why did it maybe fail? So we did a bunch of interviews. This group 4 did interviews with people, and then Susan Squires suggested that she could make this into a class project at UNT also. And so we had 2 different sets of sort of research going on. And I am delighted with the results. We had a long session with Susan and her students the other day. And I don't know, Elizabeth, if you want to talk a little bit about that, but I was very impressed with that. And there will be reports coming out on those things. I think we've learned some very valuable things here. You got anything you want to add, Susan, or sorry, Elizabeth, to that?
Well, just that here is what the students presented. There were 9 students, and here are some of the insights which I thought were fascinating. If you want to have a successful program that prepares students for the workforce, they're basically finding 4 different things. You've got to have a department chair that's committed to application and practice. You've got to have faculty members who have application and practice experience. You've got to have projects and courses that build skills. And finally, you have to know how to collaborate, and you've got to do a lot of it in the local community, in broader communities, with practitioners, with your alumni. So the combination of those insights, I think, is a critical set of findings for us.
Yeah, we really enjoyed the time we spent with that class and the discussion that followed. So I'm very pleased with that. Let's go to group 5 real quick. Group 5 is we also wanted to look at the various support organizations, organizations that lend support in various ways to anthropology programs, starting with things like student anthropology clubs, the professional associations, SFAA, AAA, and so forth, but also some of the other groups that practitioners join, which are not necessarily anthropology groups, but which are professional groups of various sorts. So we're doing a survey of those. We're compiling information about those things and putting that into a report for you. Let's go to group 6. Oh, I'm sorry, did I mention April Steele is doing group 5? Right.
Yeah.
Group 6 is being led by Astrid County, and Astrid is looking at the future of practice. How can we better prepare students for some of the challenges that they're going to face? And how can we somehow encourage or cause to be created a community of practice which they can use going forward to talk to one another? This has been an idea circulating for a long time, and Astrid and her team are getting down to business trying to figure out exactly how to do this. And so they're looking at various platforms that might be used for this. They're going to have an open house in early January to sort of test it out, see what happens. And they will be giving us a report on this as well. I'm very excited about all of that. That's it for that. We do have group 7, and Elizabeth may want to talk to you a little bit about it. All I would say to you about group 7 is we're putting it together right now, and it's going to take up in greater detail and greater granularity this question of how do we explain anthropology to other people? We think that's a big topic. So we wanted to create a group looking specially at that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thanks, Ryle. And of all the comments that we've heard from people, that one keeps coming up over and over again. It comes up with students, it comes up with teaching faculty, and we think that it's so important that we had to have a group looking at it and trying to figure out what could be some useful products that individuals could use, that classrooms could use and explore. And so that's exactly what that group will be doing. Perhaps some role plays, you know, if they say this, what do I say? What are good ways to respond to this comment, and so on. The third thing that we have been up to, hold on, is we've been talking. We've been talking a lot. We met with the leaders of every single one of these associations between October and now. And in most cases, we were presenting to their executive boards and had, you know, a short period of time on their meeting agendas. In a couple of cases, we had quite a bit of time. So again, we wanted to show you that this is a cross anthropology effort. It involves anybody who wants to be involved. It doesn't belong to any one association or society. It belongs to anthropology. It's all of us. We are restricting it right now mostly to the United States. However, in May, after we have completed what essentially is this pilot to see how well this thing can actually work, at that point, we will plan to expand it. We're already have had discussions with some of the Canadians, some of the Europeans, and I'm sure that we will have many more discussions with others around the world. The other thing we've been doing for publicity is we've been writing up little articles and updates. for different associations that appear either in their newsletters or on their websites. And so that material is out there too. And now we move to the fourth point, and that is that we want to have a perspective of a teaching faculty right now, Shanestelle Brown, who's going to speak with you about, so let me stop sharing for a moment, and we'll put Shanestelle up. And she's going to speak to you about the program at Rollins College, which is in Florida, and where a number of years ago, they made a decision as a group of faculty to incorporate what we would call professionalization directly into their curriculum. So Shanestelle, can you go ahead and speak to us?
Sure. Okay. Hi, everybody. So Rollins, our department, it's a small liberal arts college. We teach primarily undergrads, although the college does have offers master's programs and select doctoral programs, but not in anthro. So we recognize that a lot of our students, of the 30 or so majors that we have every year, which is considered a fairly good sized program on the campus, a lot of them are not necessarily going on to grad programs specifically in anthropology to become anthropologists. And so knowing that, we still think it's really important to make sure that they have transferable skills and that they are able to articulate what an anthropology education can give them. So these changes are coming out of around 2018 is when we started having those conversations as a department. And so what we did was we made a few changes. So one of those main changes was taking the core course, which was a theory course, and making it into a methods course. So I actually teach the ethnographic methods course every fall. And one of the other things that we do is that course has a community engagement designation. And at our campus, what that means is that it would be students are supposed to do at least 15 hours of some sort of service learning activity, which can take a lot of different shapes. And for my courses, we do it as community engaged research. So we have a community partner who has some sort of a research need. And so we work with them over the 15, 16 weeks in order to develop something that they can use for themselves in the future. And the students get that research experience. Another thing that we've done is we've changed the kind of graduation requirement, the very last piece of the major, from a comprehensive exam to a mock interview. And so what that involves is the student will send us their resume and a job description or a grad program that they are planning to apply to. And ideally, we want it to be as real as possible. And so what we do is we do a mock interview with the student, which takes about half an hour when we get into the feedback that we give. And we do that as the either the admissions committee or as the employer, right, potentially. And so we conduct an interview, and during that time we ask them questions like, okay, so it says here that you went to a liberal arts college. What has that gotten you? And it says here that you have an anthro major. What is that worth? Tell me about what you do, in that program. And so we actually just finished 2 of those interviews yesterday for some graduating seniors who are finishing up this semester. Other things that we've done is as part of the senior seminar, we have built professionalism in, and that we rotate that the responsibility across our 5 faculty. So each time it looks a little bit different. But for mine, when I did it, I was also in 2018, we did job fairs. We took advantage of things that were happening on campus in order to make a point of getting in front of people to talk about anthro and what that meant to them and what they could do as an anthro major or minor. Another thing that's happening is we are showing our professionalism by holding Anthro Talks based on kind of current events. And that's been interesting because we are getting a lot of non-Anthro majors who are really interested in some of these topics, but are interested. We have gotten people who have come and taken our classes as a result, but it's been an interesting sub-cross of the kind of subpopulation because it ends up being this mixture of kind of anthro-minded people and people who are really interested in these topics. What I realized today in preparing for this is that we don't actually talk as much about our own personal enrollment in these professional organizations that you just had on the previous slide. We do belong to those, but I think what we do instead and spend a lot of time on is in talking about the ethics of being a professional. And so in the archaeology class, we talk a lot about the ethics of being a professional archaeologist. We talk a lot about some of the ethics that comes up, and that is also built into all of our courses. That's all I've got.
That's wonderful.
Wow.
Anybody have any questions for Shanna Stell? Katie? Unmute, Katie.
Katie, you're muted.
How's
Okay,
that?
yeah, you're fine.
I really like what you're doing in the core course with the community engagement. I wonder how, I think about the challenge of doing that community engagement, year after year or semester after semester. Do you try to establish connections with the same organizations and continue working with them, or how do you manage that?
Thank you for that question. So community engagement is considered one of the kind of important pillars of the college, even though it's actually not a requirement for graduation that a student take one of these designated courses. It adds an extra layer of difficulty in trying to get students to learn and practice anthropological, to learn ethnographic methods, and also do that with real data or a real partner. So there's a lot of legwork on my end, just to kind of either set things up or to keep things moving, or even just to nail down a research question, which sometimes can happen early or late. So it's difficult. For the past few years, I have worked with the same community partner, and that is a local public library. And they were actually a great partner. They're moving right now, so we didn't work with them this year, but they had really specific research questions that they wanted to ask. And so it was very easy to say, okay, well, we can create a survey and we can have them do some interviews and just to kind of set it all up. In the year of the pandemic last year, I ran the course almost as like a research shop and just invited some of our previous community partners that I've worked with to just work on something small. And I would just say, okay, if you have something very small that is either we're going to revise an existing survey, or we're going to kind of generates, we'll make an interview guide for you, or just something that was really small, or if you have data that we want to analyze, then we would work on it that way. So there's a lot of prep time that's involved. This year, we're collaborating to look at community-based participatory archiving. So each year isn't always very, very different with a different community partner, but I have a few networks that I continue to kind of tap into.
Cool. Wow.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's, based on what our conversation was about, you were telling me that the students were really sweating it when they had to do their defense of their job description. And yet after they finished, it was like they were so proud of themselves. And lo and behold, they're ready to, go into the job market. They actually have some experience behind them. So also quite rewarding, I would imagine.
Yes. I mean, interesting to see even just the evolution from when we first did the set. And not to say that I thought that students took that mock interview not seriously. I just don't think the first group realized how much they needed to do to prepare. And now they kind of know that it's coming. There are still students who aren't prepared, right? I mean, one of them was yesterday. And it was very obvious, right, that he realized he could not just kind of do these answers off the cuff. And so it's interesting because I think it actually made him think, right? And the fact that we gave everybody feedback that we thought is, pretty useful, not just about their kind of resume and the way it looks, but also about, because we know these students, and have known them for a while, that it's like, hey, wait, aren't there other experiences that we did? Why are they not on here? Why didn't you mention them? There's a lot more here that you can work with in kind of generating meaningful stories about.
Great. Tracy?
Looks like Tracy has some.
Okay, so one of the questions I had regarding, and you kind of, regarding the COVID-19 and the pandemic and having to kind of switch gears a little bit there, is there a way, I don't know if y'all are hybrid, if you do online and brick and mortar, or is it just basically brick and mortar for teaching for students?
Right now, or in what I call high pandemic last year?
Either way, the reason why I'm asking is, do you think what y'all are doing is something that can also be kind of tweaked to be an online experience for like online students?
Yeah, I have no doubt of that. I mean, I have taught online courses before, but not necessarily with community partners and things like that. So last year was definitely the first time that I had done that in a solely virtual, which was supposed to be a hybrid, just gonna be honest there. Course. And so it can be done. Working with community partners I think most of it really is just about the communication and being really clear about what you can do in a certain time allotted, that the students, and then knowing what the students will do and like what their contribution is, and just kind of actually trying to parse that part out. With the methods course, there's a lot of kind of like half of the semester has a lot of reading, has a lot of exercises, and then I kind of tend to leave that second half blank because it's hard to know where certain things are going to land as far as deadlines are concerned and things like that. If it turns out that a project falls apart, maybe it falls apart. So I try to build in the space for the flexibility in case something happens. But no, it can absolutely be done in. I mean, this year we're solely in person on campus in masks, and that's still like a different experience, not totally normal than it was 2 years ago. So I would say that it still can be done. It just requires a different kind of communication. We weren't physically able to all go to visit our community partner at the same time because of their own physical distancing restrictions, right? So I didn't get to see their experience of going, but we did have a lot of conversations about it, just as an example. Yeah.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
And I would now like to switch the conversation a bit and get your advice. So we have a key question that we want to ask everyone, and feel free to respond in the chat or verbally. How can we get the word out about the Career Readiness Commission? And by that, I mean, how do we make more people aware of what we are up to? I mean, you've seen what we have done, the little newsletters, the speaking to the leadership of various associations and societies, through our individual networks, perhaps through your own networks. What more can we do? And so the floor is open, the chat is open. Please help us think through this. Are we missing things? Are we missing opportunities? I just saw a hand. Is it Robert? Robert.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going through job application processes right now. So I'm kind of getting a sense of what is happening with recruiting. And so a couple things that came to me is that I think the nature of the way hiring is taking place is changing rapidly. So I've experienced two different kinds of jobs. One where people have no idea what anthropology is, but their job is very closely aligned with anthropology, which I found to be a much harder sell to even get past, initial steps. But I had a really interesting experience with a company that actually came and did a presentation for us because they've hired anthropologists, and they now know that anthropology is something that they're looking for. Their job descriptions very well align with that. As a matter of fact, a lot of the job descriptions, they should really be titled anthropologists. They're like qualitative researchers and moderator researchers and things like that. But really, when you tick all the boxes, it's exactly anthropology in practice. So I've mentioned before how I think it's very important not to go at this from the other way too, that human resources and companies need to be aware of anthropology as much as anthropology students need to be aware of navigating that system. Now this company's already hired 2 anthropologists who graduated from our program. They're actively recruiting more because that's the exact skill set that they're looking for. And right now they have 30 positions open. That's very, it was the most excited I've experienced in terms of recruiters and people actually wanting to talk to me, enthusiastic about anthropology, knowing what it was, rather than being in the position where having to try and validate that you're bringing the right skills to the position. And so that was a totally different experience for me. And one other thing I noticed, and this goes back to how hiring and resumes are done right now. I really think that it's important when you're applying to a company to understand what kind of resumes they are looking for. I have been doing very traditional type of resumes. When this company basically pitched us, they were saying, we don't want to see traditional resumes. We want to see infographic resumes, make a video of yourself, do all these things, which has always kind of been taboo. So when you're applying to a company, if they're looking for something exciting and then you give them a plain resume, you're not getting anywhere. So what I did was, rather than send them a resume, I created a document, like it was like a business pitch. It was a PowerPoint about me. It touched on things like why this company was right for me, what I valued in their company. It showed how much I understood about the company. So it was far more than just a resume. It had pictures and and that actually now I'm in my 3rd interview with this company. So, but I think that's, and the way I say that is I think that it's important that anthropology is always kind of looked at as okay, we have to justify why we should be hired for these positions, but that if the dialogue is expanded with the commission, the websites out to companies, that they can see what the value is, and then they start to associate anthropology with it. Because even at this company, anthropology is only one of the fields listed in the job apps. It'll say qualitative researcher, it'll say organizational psychology. Well, they're asking organizational psychology, but then they're asking for qualitative researcher. So it doesn't really align because they don't know what that term is. So those are some things that I noticed in the past.
Okay, thank you. Robert, Bob Moraes.
Hi, everybody. I've spent a lot of time in the marketing world, so I'm going to give you some thoughts specifically from marketing. It seems to me that you probably have done a really good job of thinking about your target segments and generally about your messaging. What I would say is that the first thing is, after you've identified who you want to talk to, is the absolutely best way to speak with them. And I think you have to go through a testing process for that, because one of the problems in, I think, the messaging that we're all circling around here ultimately with whether it's to faculty, whether it's to students, whether it's potential employers, is that they're going to nod their heads and say, yes, that's what I want. And there's something statisticians call social desirability. You want to be liked by the person interviewing you. And I think that we really want to understand the absolutely best way to speak to them about what this offering is and what's in it for them. And the second thing is that I'm assuming that there are better people than I, within my capabilities of using social media to reach people. But the one thing I'll say is that we have to think, unlike academics, that frequency is absolutely critical. So you've got to get out there and say it over and over and over again to your target audience. And so it may seem repetitious, but it's got to be done, because many of the first times they see or hear it, they're not going to process it. And for them to fully absorb it and act on it, they've really got to see it a lot.
Okay, thanks, Bob. All right, who else has some thoughts?
While we're waiting, can I ask a technical question, maybe to you, Elizabeth? We're getting a lot of interesting comments and suggestions on the chat.
Yes,
Are we going to be able to capture those?
yes, I'm going to save
Okay.
the chat. Yep.
Good. Yep, good. I'm always afraid that we'll forget and then it's gone.
Yeah, I've only been able to answer a few of the ones that flew by me quickly.
I was doing my best too. I'm not keeping up with it though. Yeah,
Okay,
we're looking at them all, but yeah.
Susan, Andriata?
I think mine's a different kind of comment, and I'll just say it. I would teach only undergraduates, and I'm experiencing a lot of Zoom fatigue, fatigue in general by the students, and almost to the point where they're glad to graduate, glad the semester's over. They can't take on anymore. And I'm afraid that this, that we're in this now almost 2 years. It's a bit discouraging thinking about anthropology online, but I'm also running out of ways to encourage them to still keep trying, keep looking, don't give up. And to finish your degree, be in debt, and not know to where to take these next steps. We're all struggling too, trying to help with this commission, but this is a current thing for them too. And I think it is important not for us to ignore it.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. It's more and more about the difficulties that COVID has caused with mental health and with just your life in general. Jay Schenzel?
Yeah, I was just going to say that it was really wonderful to be able to interview 5 or 6 people who were relatively recent graduates. And one of the things, I learned many things from that. So they will all come out in group 3 as the data are analyzed. But there are some really important messages they wanted to convey. One was that they're not getting enough methods in their undergraduate program. So the idea of involving students in research, even if it's online, is really important. They said mixed methods research was important because they're using those tools but are not well trained in them. They also said that they took advantage of every single opportunity, mostly not in their departments. They had to go beyond their departments, and their departments are not working interdisciplinarily. So they had to make connections with other disciplines and reach out on their own. So when they did, clearly these are students that have made it. But that's kind of a message to us. We're an interdisciplinary discipline, but if we're not reaching out to other disciplines in the training of students, that might be an issue. And the final thing I want to mention is that mentorship, they said, was really important to them. And they're getting mentorship in different places from important faculty, but also from even in their work. Some of them are getting paid to find mentors. So looking at the whole issue of mentorship, and I see Noel and Neil are on this call, I think is really critical, just to look at the many different kinds of mentorship that students need at different levels is very important now.
Jay, I just had one question. I didn't understand something you said. You said some are paid to find mentorships.
they are getting in their work, they are getting money to spend or an allocation so that they can find a mentor and pay them.
Oh,
Which
through
is-
whoever their employer is.
Yes, this
Interesting.
is through their employer, which is really amazing. So there probably is a lot of that going on that we don't know about, but it is, since we know it works in undergraduate and graduate training, maybe that's something to promote with employers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and to add to Jay's point, yeah, I would say with that, it's coaching is like a huge industry now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I would expect that the budgets are they're looking for like coaches within their work as well. And Jan, I think you've had your hand up for a while here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm only looking
Yeah.
at one screen. Go ahead, Jan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to throw in, and maybe the 7th initiative will kind of pick up on that. But one of the things that I see both in working with students and actually with professionals is that they're very good at describing what they do. And they have a sort of neutral, and even if they're creative and create a portfolio or create some sort of self-advertisement, they still don't talk about their impacts, and they don't even know how to measure or document or describe their impacts. And that's a language that is really a very powerful one. And when I work with our Career Center, we go over all the student resumes and go, okay, you did this amazing community project, and what happened because of it? And they can't articulate that.
Yeah.
And that's true when I talk to professionals about what did they do in organizations? Well, they do this, but what impact did it have? Ooh, that's a harder one to get. And so developing a language around that in the world of impact, I think, is critical.
Yeah, that's really crucial, I think. Gideon?
Hi, yeah, and sort of building up upon that, I think the most solicited and or unsolicited advice I give to people is contrary to, you know, how it went for school, like you really have to show and not tell what you can do. And then when I say that to them, I show them examples of how I show and not tell. And so from a communication standpoint of how the commission can get out what we're doing, you know, all the awesome work that's going on with the Delphi report and the interviews and the surveys. I know that it's going to be on the website, but really driving home these examples of what you can do, what you can make, building an interactive portfolio and shaping that portfolio so it's, you know, it looks like it's customized for the potential employer. That's how I personally have been paving my way in like a much more tech heavy space than I was prepared to in school. And that's, you know, to me, there's an opportunity here since we have, the commission has things to show.
Yeah. Amy?
Excuse me, my background is not with industry partners as much as anything else. And so one of the pieces, like I'm hearing a lot of business pieces, and I recognize that this is important, but like I employ people regularly to teach my anthropology classes, and I'm always looking for additional humans. And frankly, I think every campus needs an anthropologist because we seem to be the only people who can talk to multiple groups and multiple types of faculty members and student services. I'm not at SNU, Tracy. I am, Great Bay is like 2 towns over from where SNU is hosted. We have probably a dozen articulation agreements with them. And so I'm constantly working with all of these different colleges. And so one of the pieces I'm wondering is, in addition to industry partners, should we be looking at training for what, in my case, it's community colleges look like, but also what higher education is starting to look like? Because it's not just, I don't know anyone in my area who simply can teach their classes and go home. So looking at the different committee work, looking at the student services side of things, my board of trustee president is an anthropologist. And so they end up in lots of different places in education that's not just a research institution teaching, but there are lots of opportunities. I have a lot of friends who ended up in student services as well, because we like dealing with people. We like looking at those different kinds of problems and articulation points. So while the focus, for my very traditional R1 institution was you'll teach a couple classes, but don't let it get in the way of your research. Perhaps some more professional teaching pieces, because there are a lot of initiatives right now that are looking at how to deal with how students balance all of these different types of pulls on their education, and how all of those pieces affect the institution. My compatriot at Bunker Hill and I giggled off the interview about the fact that we're on every committee because we're just interested in what everyone's doing. So perhaps that's the way to sell to administration. You need anthropologists because they'll be on all of your committees. But in more seriousness, so looking at those types of opportunities and what's available to people. And also, since I'm not muted, just to plug what Susan's students did in the group 4, it was wonderful to get to watch. I was sorry I only got to see parts of it, but it was just delightful to get to see what the students did. So thank you for all your work, Susan.
Thanks, Amy. Neil? Just have a few minutes because we're 4 minutes out from the hour.
There's some interesting things, and as part of the Futures Commission, the committee, one of the challenges I think anthropology has is getting out of the paper world and into the video world. And so how do you present a resume online? How do you present a video resume? How do you do that kind of work? How do we translate what we're doing in something like this to a world where new anthropologists are coming in and they could stop in and look at this conversation and say, yeah, I can see where I would be part of this, where I would find this important. So I think the work of the commission is critical, but how do we keep bringing younger people in over time? That I think becomes a real challenge.
Yeah, I can respond real quick, Neil. I think that's a very good point. And it kind of is what I was alluding to at the very beginning of this meeting, which is that eventually we're going to need to talk about how do we keep this going into the future? How do we sustain it? And part of that is bringing fresh people, especially practitioners, into this group and tapping both their energy and their idealism, but also their experience, their real experience. Some of the comments that were made today about how students are having to handle so much at the same time, I think is very good for us to hear, because a lot of us, especially me, I'm talking as a retired person, I don't have those pressures. I don't live in that world anymore. I used to, but I've kind of forgotten it, And so part of our problem is to try and figure out how to adapt what we're doing to the needs of the moment, without chasing flavors of the month, if you see what I'm saying, but to keep it real. I think that's a very good point. Thank you.
And there'll be more in the future about what we think we might do. We've got some preliminary thoughts on it. One of Ryle's favorites, I think, is to try to establish a community of practice. And you could imagine that could be in part, not completely, but in part facilitated by the group 6 work, which is at this point testing out the Gather platform. But that's not the only way. Any last thoughts before we close for today?
Okay, just a final pitch. If anybody wants this Delphi report, 8 pages, it's pretty easy read. Just shoot me an email and I'll send it right back to you. Thanks.
And I just saw Ian's comment in the chat. I'm sorry, I just couldn't get to all the chat comments, but we will save the chat. And thank you for all of those. Thanks for your participation today. Feel free to be in touch with either Ryle or me. I'm going to make the slides available in a PDF, and I will post them on the Google Docs. If you don't have that link, you can reach out to Jennifer Studebaker or to me, and we'll make sure that that you get that. Or you could just email me directly and I'll send you a copy of it. So thank you all so much. And I hope you have a relaxing break as we approach the end of the year. And we hope to see you all rested and ready for 2022. Thanks so much.